Hey you guys, good morning. It's going to be a beautiful day. I hope that you get outside and play and enjoy the sunshine. Um, this construction will hopefully end here today or tomorrow, and then I can start doing more videos outside, but it just is never ending and it's loud, and they're just kind of onto the final steps, and so hopefully, um, we'll be done here soon. If you remember that Snape caught Harry, Harry threw mud at Malfoy, Snape caught him, and now he called Lupin into his office. Okay. Lupin, Snape called into the fire. I want a word. Utterly bewildered, Harry stared at the fire. A large shape had appeared in it, revolving very fast. Seconds later, Professor Lupin was clambering out of the fireplace, brushing ash off of his shabby robes. You called, Severus? Said Lupin mildly. I certainly did, said Snape, his face contorted with fury as he strode back to his desk. I have just asked Potter to empty his pockets. He was carrying this. Let me do that again. This! Said Snape, as his face contorted or twisted with fury as he strode back to his desk. I have just asked Potter to empty his pockets. He was carrying this. Oh, I just read that. Snape pointed at the parchment on which the words Messrs. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs were still shining. An odd, closed expression appeared on Lupin's face. Well, said Snape. Lupin continued to stare at the map. Harry had the impression that Lupin was doing some very quick thinking. Well, said Snape again, this parchment is plainly full of dark magic. This is supposed to be your area of expertise, Lupin. Where do you imagine Potter got such a thing? Lupin looked it up and down by the merest half glance in Harry's direction, warned him not to interrupt. Full of dark magic, he repeated mildly. Do you really think so, Severus? It looks to me as though it's merely a piece of parchment that insults anybody who tries to read it. Childish, but surely not dangerous. I imagine Harry got it from a joke shop. Oh, you do, said Snape. His jaw had gone rigid with anger. You think a joke shop could supply him with such a thing? You don't think it more likely that he got it directly from the manufacturers? Harry didn't understand what Snape was talking about, nor, apparently, did Lupin. You mean from Mr. Wormtail or one of these people, he said. Harry, do you know any of these men? No, said Harry quickly. You see, Severus, said Lupin, turning back to Snape. It looks like a Zonko product to me. Right on cue, Ron came bursting into the office. He was completely out of breath and stopped just short of Snape's desk, clutching the stitch in his chest and trying to speak. I gave Harry that stuff, he choked. Bought it in Zonko's years ago. Which, Ron is such a good friend. That just cracks me up. He knew just what to say. Well, said Lupin, clapping his hands together and looking around cheerfully, that seems to clear that up, Severus. I'll take this back, shall I? He folded the map and tucked it inside his robes. Harry, Ron, come with me. I need a word about the vampire essay I assigned you. Excuse us, Severus. Harry didn't dare look at Snape as they left his office. He, Ron, and Lupin walked all the way back to the entrance hall before speaking. Then Harry turned to Lupin. Professor, I don't want to hear any explanations, said Lupin shortly. He glanced around the empty entrance hall and lowered his voice. I happen to know that this map was confiscated by Mr. Filch many years ago. Yes, I know it's a map, he said to Harry and Ron, who looked amazed. I know exactly what it does. And I don't want to know how it fell into your possession. I am, however, astounded that you didn't hand it in, particularly after what happened last time a student left information lying about the castle. And I can't let you have it back, Harry. Harry had expected that and was too keen for explanations to protest. Why did Snape think I'd gotten it from the manufacturers, which would be like the people who made it? Because, Lupin hesitated, because these map makers would have wanted to lure you out of school. They'd think it extremely entertaining. Do you know the people who enchanted the map? Said Harry, impressed. We've met, he said shortly. He was looking at Harry more seriously than ever before. Don't expect me to cover up for you again, Harry. I cannot make you take Sirius Black seriously, but I would have thought that you would have heard But I would have thought that what you have heard when the Dementors draw near you, would have had more effect on you. Your parents gave their lives to keep you alive, Harry. It's a poor way to repay them, gambling their sacrifice for a bag of magic tricks. He walked away, leaving Harry feeling worse by far than he had at any point in Snape's office. Slowly, he and Ron started up the marble staircase. As Harry passed the one-eyed witch, he remembered the invisibility cloak. It was still down there, but he didn't dare go and get it. It's my fault, said Ron abruptly. I persuaded you to go. Lupin's right. It was stupid. We shouldn't have done it. He broke off, and they had reached the corridor where the security trolls were pacing, and Hermione was walking towards them. One look on her face convinced Harry that she had heard what happened. His heart plummeted. Had she told Professor McGonagall? Come to have a good gloat, said Ron savagely as she stepped in front of them. Or have you just been to tell on us? No, said Hermione. She was holding a letter in her hands and her lip was trembling. I just thought you ought to know. Hagrid lost his case. Buckbeak is going to be executed. Which means... Chapter 15. The Quidditch Final. He sent me this, Hermione said, holding out the letter. Harry took it. The parchment was damp, and enormous teardrops had smudged the ink so badly in places it was very difficult to read. Dear Hermione, we lost. I'm allowed to bring him back to Hogwarts. Execution date is to be fixed. Beaky has enjoyed London. I won't forget all the help you gave us. Hagrid. They can't do this, said Hagrid. They can't. Buckbeak isn't dangerous. Malfoy's dad frightened the committee into it, said Hermione, wiping her eyes. You know what it's like. They're a bunch of doddery old fools, and they were scared, and there'll be an appeal, though. There always is. Only, I can't see any hope. Nothing will have changed. Yeah, it will, said Ron fiercely. You won't have to do all the work alone this time, Hermione. I'll help. Oh, Ron! Hermione flung her arms around Ron's neck and broke down completely. Ron, looking quite terrified, patted her awkwardly on top of the head. Finally, Hermione drew away. Ron, I'm really, really sorry about Scabbers, she sobbed. Oh, well, he was old, said Ron, looking thoroughly relieved as she had let go of him. And he was a bit useless. You never know. Mom and Dad might get me an owl now. The safety measures imposed on the students since Black's second break-in made it impossible for Harry, Ron, and Hermione to go and visit Hagrid in the evenings. Their only chance of talking to him was during Care of Magical Creatures lessons. He seemed numb with shock about the verdict. It's all my fault. Got all tongue-tied, and then I was sitting there in black robes, and I kept dropping my notes and forgetting all the dates he looked up for me, Hermione. Then Lucius Malfoy stood up and said his bit, and the committee just did exactly what he told him. There's still an appeal, said Ron fiercely. Don't give up yet. We're working on it. But they were walking back up to the castle with the rest of the class. Ahead, they could see Malfoy, who was walking with Crabbe and Goyle, and kept looking back, laughing. It's no good, Ron, said Hagrid sadly as they reached the castle steps. That committee's in Lucius Malfoy's pockets. I'm just going to make sure the rest of Beaky's time is the happiest he's ever had. I owe him that. Hagrid turned around and hurried back towards his cabin, his face buried in his handkerchief. Look at him blubber, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle had been standing just inside the castle doors listening. Have you ever seen something quite as pathetic? Said Malfoy. And he's supposed to be our teacher. Harry and Ron both made furious moves toward Malfoy, but Hermione got there first. Smack! She had slapped Malfoy around the face with all the strength she could muster. Malfoy staggered. Harry, Ron, Crabbe, and Goyle stood flabbergasted as Hermione raised her hand again. Don't you dare call Hagrid pathetic, you foul, you evil! Hermione, said Ron weakly, and he tried to grab her hand as she swung it back. Get off me, Ron! Ooh, things are getting heated. Hermione pulled out her wand. Malfoy stepped backwards. Crabbe and Goyle looked at him for instructions, thoroughly bewildered. Come on, Malfoy muttered, and the next moment all three of them had disappeared into the passageway to the dungeons. Hermione, said Ron again, sounding both stunned and impressed. Harry, you'd better beat him in the Quidditch final, Hermione said shrilly. You better, because I can't stand it if Slytherin wins. We need to get to Charms, said Ron, still goggling at Hermione. We better go. They hurried up the marble staircase towards Professor Flitwick's classroom. You're late, boys, said Professor Flitwick reprovingly as Harry opened the classroom door. Come along, quickly, wands out. We're experimenting with cheering charms today. We've already divided into pairs. Harry and Ron turned to a desk at the back and opened their bags. Ron looked behind him. Where's Hermione gone? Harry looked around too. Hermione hadn't entered the classroom yet. Harry knew she had been right next to him when they opened the door. That's weird, said Harry, staring at Ron. Maybe she went to the bathroom or something? But Hermione didn't turn up all lesson. She could have done with a cheering charm on her, too, said Ron, as the class left for lunch, all grinning broadly. The cheering charms had left them with a feeling of great contentment. Hermione wasn't at lunch either. By the time they finished their apple pie, the after effects of the cheering charms were wearing off, and Harry and Ron had started to get slightly worried. You don't think Malfoy did something to her, Ron said anxiously as they hurried upstairs towards the Gryffindor tower. They passed the security trolls, gave the fat lady the password, Flibbert Gibbet, and scrambled through the portrait hole into the common room. Hermione was sitting at a table, fast asleep, her head resting on an open arithmetic book. They went to sit down on either side of her. Harry prodded her awake. What? Said Hermione, waking with a start and staring wildly around. Is it time to go? What lesson do we have? Divination, but it's not for another 20 minutes, said Harry. Hermione, why didn't you come to Charms? What? Oh no, Hermione squeaked. I forgot to go to Charms. But how could you forget, said Harry. You were with us until we were right outside the classroom. I don't believe it, Hermione wailed. Was Professor Flitwick angry? Oh, it was Malfoy. I was thinking about him and I just lost track of things. You know what, Hermione, said Ron, looking down at the enormous arithmetic book Hermione had been using as a pillow. I reckon you're cracking up. You're trying to do way too much work. No, I'm not, said Hermione, brushing her hair out of her eyes and staring hopelessly around for her bag. I just made a mistake, that's all. I'd better go and see Professor Flitwick and say sorry. I'll see you in divination. Hermione joined them at the foot of the ladder to Professor Trelawney's classroom 20 minutes later, looking extremely harassed. I can't believe I missed cheering charms, and I bet they come up in our exams. Professor Litwick's hinted that they might. Together they climbed the ladder into the dim, stifling tower. Glowing on every little table was a crystal ball full of pearly white mist. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat down together at the same rickety table, and I'm going to stop there. Enjoy your day, you guys. I miss you a bunch. I have a bunch of meetings today that I'd much rather be playing outside with you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.